What happens when the insecure boyfriend everyone laughs at walks into an office tower lobby with a calm face and a stack of receipts? How far can a woman go mocking a man's body and worth on social media before someone calls it defamation instead of just jokes? And what does it look like when the club bad boy disappears, but the complaint and takedown demand do not? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Ivo Marner, I am 31 years old, and for most of my life I believed that being a quiet, steady man was enough. I work as a live sound technician in a small music venue and studio, where my job is to listen more than I talk. I move in the background, checking cables, adjusting levels, making sure other people sound strong and important under the lights. I liked that role. It fit the way I saw myself. Not flashy, not the center of attention, but reliable. When I started dating Kayla, I thought she understood that. She once said she liked that I did not need to show off, that I felt safe and solid. Somewhere along the way, those same traits became the things she held up for others to laugh at. Kayla is 29 and works part-time as a bartender while trying to grow as a fitness influencer. Our small apartment is full of ring lights, resistance bands, and tripods. At first, I was proud of her energy. She filmed short workout clips in the living room, and I helped set up lights so the videos looked clean. She told her followers that her boyfriend worked in sound and made her content professional. I used to stand behind the camera, giving thumbs up when a take looked good. Then slowly, the camera turned the other way. I went from being the person who helped to being part of the show, even when I did not want to be. One evening in the kitchen, I was reaching up to get a heavy pot from the top shelf. The cupboard door stuck for a second, and I had to stretch awkwardly to free it. I heard Kayla's phone open with that small sliding sound. When I turned my head, she was already pointing the camera at me, laughing as she filmed me struggling with a piece of cookware. She later posted a clip calling it a real-life upper body workout for weak boyfriends. In the video, I forced a smile, put the pot down, and tried to laugh with her. Inside, I felt a small sting, but I told myself it was just humor. People tease the ones they love, I thought, and it is better to be easygoing than to complain. The gym became another stage. We trained together there sometimes, and it was one of the few places where our worlds overlapped. She moved confidently between machines, correcting other people's form and chatting with trainers. I stayed quiet, focusing on my sets. One day she filmed me while I was on the bench press. I was not pushing a big weight, just working steadily, counting my breathing. She stood near my head with her phone, narrating my effort into the camera in a playful voice. Later, I saw the posted clip where she called me her sweet little bench buddy, saying I was trying my best but still could not match her favorite heavy lifter at the gym. She mentioned a club promoter named Tyce as the example of a real man who threw weights around like toys. I watched the video alone at home, hearing the laughter in the background as my arms shook in the frame. The first time she compared me to Tyce in front of me, we were sitting in the living room. She scrolled through her feed, showing me his shirtless photos and flyers for club nights. She said brands loved that kind of look, said it was what people clicked on and wanted to follow. She looked at me, then back at the screen, and made a comment about how some men were made to be in the shadows, while others were meant for the spotlight. I tried to answer with some small joke about being a shadow worker, but it did not land. That night, after she went to bed, I opened my laptop on the coffee table and started a simple spreadsheet. In one column, I typed initials, in another, dates, in a third, just a few words like gym video or kitchen post. It felt strange to track my own humiliation, but I did not know what else to do with the unease sitting in my chest. The teasing did not stay inside our walls. At the gym, I noticed two guys near the lockers laughing over a phone. They lowered their voices when I entered, but I recognized Kayla's profile picture at the top of the screen. One of them glanced at my arms, then back at the video. I pretended not to see it. Later, a trainer I knew casually mentioned that my girlfriend was great at marketing, then added that I must be secure if I could handle all those jokes. The word secure stuck with me. I did not feel secure. I felt like a prop. At home, I started paying more attention to the small things Kayla said when she thought I was not really listening. She began talking more about Tyce, the club promoter, describing his energy and strength and the way he took up space. She said he knew how to show off his body and that brands liked that. She said it in a tone that was half admiration and half test. She mentioned that he had invited her to host some nights at his club, to bring her fitness followers there. I said it could be good for her growth, but I also said I hoped she would keep work and personal life clear. She rolled her eyes and told me only insecure men worried about such things. Again, I swallowed my reply. One night, I sat on the bed while she stood on our small balcony, leaning on the rail with her phone pressed to her ear. The door was half open, and I could hear pieces of her conversation through the thin glass. She described me as sweet but soft, saying that sometimes she felt more like my older sister than my girlfriend. She told whoever was on the other end that she wanted to feel what it was like to be with a man who made her feel small for once, in a good way, and she used Tyce's name in a way that made my stomach drop. I stared at the wall and tried to breathe slowly. When she came back inside, she acted like nothing important had been said. She asked if I had turned off the oven and if I would mind doing the dishes because she was tired from training clients. I did the dishes and did not tell her what I had heard. That same night, after she fell asleep, I walked to the small desk by the window. I pulled a sticky note from a pad and wrote 2 words: "Bring forms." I did not know exactly which forms or when I would bring them. I only knew that I needed a reminder that I was not crazy, that what I was seeing and hearing might matter one day. I slid the note into a book on the shelf, pressing it between pages. Then I opened my spreadsheet again and added another line. The stairwell outside our apartment became another witness. On Fridays, Kayla often left the building dressed for club nights. I watched from our doorway sometimes as she walked down the stairs in tight jeans, high heels, and a short top, her phone pinned between her ear and shoulder. I heard her telling someone that she was ready to show them what a real man felt like. She laughed in that sharp way she used when she felt powerful. I stayed on the landing as her steps faded. I did not chase her, did not shout after her. I just stood there in the quiet once the door at the bottom closed, listening to my own heart beating in my ears. The first real crack for me came on a night when she came home long after midnight. I was sitting in the dark living room, pretending to watch a muted show while I waited. When the lock turned, I heard her stumble slightly. She dropped her keys into the bowl by the door and walked past me without really looking, still scrolling. In the bedroom, she set her phone on the dresser for a moment to take off her earrings. From the hallway, I saw the screen light up with a message from a contact saved only with a fire emoji. The preview said that next time there would be no training wheels. Before I could read more, she grabbed the phone, turned the screen down, and pushed the bedroom door almost closed. The latch clicked softly into place, and I was left alone in the dim hallway, staring at the spot where the light had disappeared. The morning after that late return, I went to the gym alone, partly because I needed to clear my head, partly because routine was the only thing that still felt like mine. I put my bag in a locker, changed into workout clothes, and tried to focus on simple things: breathing, counting reps, feeling my muscles work. For the first 20 minutes, it almost worked. Then, while I filled my water bottle at the fountain, I heard my own name and Kayla's in the same sentence from the locker room doorway. 2 guys stood near the benches, shoulders pressed together, laughing quietly over a phone one of them held low. I did not have to look hard to recognize Kayla's profile picture at the top of the screen. I kept my eyes on my water bottle, pretending not to notice, but their laughter had a sharp edge to it. One of them said something about the little bench buddy, and the other added that not every man was built to lift. The words hit me harder than any weight ever had. When I finally glanced over, they saw me and froze. One of them cleared his throat, locking the phone, while the other suddenly became very interested in his shoelaces. No one apologized, they just acted as if nothing had been said. I walked back to the weight floor with my bottle and felt every set of eyes like a small pin in my skin. Later, near the squat racks, Talia, the instructor and a mutual friend, came over between clients. She asked if I had seen Kayla's latest post. I said not yet. She hesitated, then said she was not sure it was fair, even if it was, for engagement. I heard the careful way she used that word, as if popularity could smooth all harm. She promised to send it to me if I wanted to see it. I nodded. I did not trust my voice to stay steady if I tried to answer. When I sat in my car afterward, my phone buzzed with a message from Talia, a link and a short line saying, "You should know what people are sharing." I opened it. The clip was from the gym. In it, I lay on the bench, pushing through a set, sweat on my forehead, arms shaking slightly as I neared failure. Kayla's voice narrated from off camera, calling me her sweet little bench buddy, and saying I was trying so hard, like someone practicing with emotional weights. She ended by saying that real men, like Tyce, did not struggle with this kind of thing. The comments were full of laughing emojis and remarks about beta energy and starter boyfriends. My full name was not tagged, but my face was clearly visible. Our city is not that big. I downloaded the video without watching it again. The file saved, and a small cloud icon on my phone flashed a message that it had been uploaded. I added a new line in my spreadsheet later. Date, initials, gym humiliation clip. The words looked small and flat compared to the weight in my chest, but at least they stayed still on the screen. Behind the numbers and letters, there was a new certainty forming. This was not just private teasing, this was a pattern, and patterns can be shown. At the venue that evening, I tried to lose myself in the usual chaos. The live room hummed with pre-show noise, cords snaking across the floor, monitors buzzing. I did sound checks, adjusted gain levels, and tried to remember that this was a place where my skills actually mattered. During a break, I stood at the sound booth, watching the band rehearse. One of the guitarists wandered up with his phone in hand. He squinted at my face, then at the screen, then back again. He asked if I was the guy from that gym video. I shrugged and said that people like to post things. He laughed awkwardly, said Kayla seemed like fun, and walked away before I had to answer. Later, in the small office behind the stage, my manager, Eli, asked if I had a minute. His tone was calm, but serious, the way it was when we were about to talk about money or contracts. I followed him in, closed the door, and sat in the chair across from his cluttered desk. He said he needed to discuss something personal, which made my stomach tighten. He leaned back and explained that the venue's name had been tagged in some recent posts involving my relationship. He did not describe the posts in detail, but I knew exactly what he meant. He said that while he did not care what happened in our private life, the venue could not be connected to drama that might scare off certain clients or sponsors. He asked if I was okay, because I seemed distracted, and he also asked if there was any chance of this becoming a bigger public fight. I told him I understood, that I did not plan to respond publicly or start any wars online. I said I would keep my personal issues from spilling into the venue's feed. My voice stayed level, even though part of me wanted to sink into the chair and disappear. Eli nodded, said he trusted me, but he also suggested that if things got worse, I should talk to someone who knew how to handle it. He did not say a lawyer, but the implication lay between us like another piece of equipment in the room. When I left the office, I felt like a line had been drawn around me at work too. Now I was not just a quiet sound tech. I was the man from the video, the one everyone had already seen. When my shift ended, I went home feeling heavier than after any load-in. The apartment was dark when I arrived. Kayla had left a note saying she was out filming content at the co-working space with some other creators. There were dishes in the sink, and her ring light still set up in the living room. I turned on the kitchen light and stared at the wall where our old calendar hung. A date near the end of the month was circled in red ink, with a small heart drawn next to it. It was not our anniversary or any holiday I recognized. I looked at it for a long moment, then opened the drawer below and pulled out a 3-ring binder I had bought recently. I labeled 3 sections inside with simple words: home, auto, bank. It looked like basic adult organization on the surface. I started slipping printed transaction summaries into plastic sleeves, no highlights, no notes that would alarm anyone scanning quickly. Behind a divider, I added a printout of the gym videos page with the date and time visible near the bottom, the comments running alongside. I closed the binder and placed it on the shelf near some old manuals. To anyone else, it was just paperwork. To me, it was the beginning of a structure. That night, I sat on the couch with my laptop open. I moved the gym video from my phone to a hidden folder, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen. Once again, the cloud icon popped up, confirming that the file had been uploaded. I added another line to my spreadsheet and then closed the window. From the bedroom, I heard Kayla come in, talking on speakerphone about a collaboration, laughing about how her weak ex was accidentally giving her more engagement than any workout routine ever had. She mentioned my job, my build, my supposed tears. I listened to her version of me echo down the hallway, and I knew other people were hearing that same story in their homes, with no chance for me to answer. The next day at the venue, the jokes continued in softer forms. A drummer asked if I had started a fitness journey now that my ex was moving up. Another staff member patted my shoulder, saying I should not worry because women grow out of bad boy phases. No one asked if I was hurt. They assumed I was either angry or shrugging it off. The truth was a quiet mix of both. I smiled where I had to, stayed silent where I did not trust myself to speak, and told myself I would find another way to respond that did not involve raised voices or broken noses. By late afternoon, when we were setting up for another show, I noticed Eli standing at the edge of the room watching me. He gave a small signal, the same one he used when a band was out of time. I knew that meant he wanted another talk. At the same moment, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I checked it on the walk to his office. A notification from a group chat lit up the screen. A link to Kayla's new story time, where she promised to reveal how her ex had tried to hold her back from real men. The clip thumbnail showed my face blurred in the background of a gym, her smile sharp and confident in the front. As Eli held the office door open and said he needed a quick word, the group chat ping again, stacking the notification on my screen and pushing the situation further into a public ripple I could no longer ignore. When Eli closed his office door the second time and asked if I needed time off, I realized the story had grown larger than my ability to ignore it. I told him I was fine, that I would keep things professional, that I had no intention of turning my relationship into a public fight. He believed me enough to drop the subject, but he reminded me again that the venue's name could not get pulled into anything messy. It was a reasonable warning, but it also made something clear. Whatever Kayla was building online, I was the one standing in front of it at work, taking the hit with my own face and name. A few days later, Kayla came home buzzing with excitement about a club event Tyce was hosting. She said he had invited her to do a fitness takeover night, where she would run a warm-up routine for the crowd and then help push drink specials. She described it like a big opportunity, the kind of thing that would put her on more brand radars. She tossed me a line about how it would be good for me to come, to show I supported her evolution. There was a certain edge in the way she said evolution, like I was something she had already grown past. I did not want to go anywhere near that club. But I also knew that if I stayed home, the story would be simple. Insecure ex sulks while real man celebrates. So I told her I would come for a while, to see her perform. On the night of the event, my brother Jonas insisted on coming with me. He had been following pieces of the story through mutual friends and small comments from our mother, and he did not like any of it. He is taller and broader than I am, the kind of man people do not easily laugh at to his face. In the car on the way to the club, he said that if Tyce disrespected me directly, he would handle it. I told him firmly that I did not want that. I said I needed him to be my witness, not my fists. He muttered something about how sometimes fists spoke faster, but he agreed to try. The downtown nightclub pulsed with bass even before we stepped inside. A line snaked down the sidewalk, people dressed in bright colors and tight clothes, phones already out. Posters near the entrance showed Tyce with his arms crossed, Kayla in a sports bra beside him, both of them looking fierce. Her name was written in a bold font beneath his, like a feature act. My own name, my existence, did not appear anywhere. Inside, the air smelled like sweat, perfume, and smoke, the kind that sticks to your clothes for days. Lights flashed and danced along the walls, turning faces into short bursts of blue and red. We found a place near the back of the dance floor where we could see the small stage. Tyce moved through the crowd like he owned the room, high-fiving people and greeting bartenders. Kayla stood near the DJ booth, adjusting her sports top and laughing with a group of women. When she saw me, she gave a small wave and a smile that felt more like a stage direction than a greeting. She pointed at Jonas, commented loudly to her friends that I had brought back up, and they laughed like it was the funniest line of the night. The music dipped, and the DJ announced a special fitness segment. Lights focused on the stage as Kayla jogged up, full of energy. She led the crowd in simple moves, high knees and squats, turning the club into a loud, sweaty exercise class. People shouted and clapped. Tyce joined her, flexing and showing off, lifting her onto his shoulder for a moment while the crowd roared. From where we stood, I could see several phones held high, recording everything. I felt Jonas tense beside me, his hands curling into fists. Then Kayla took the microphone. She wiped fake sweat from her brow, laughed, and told the crowd she used to date a guy who was more interested in adjusting volume knobs than lifting anything heavier than his feelings. I knew who she meant. A few people near us laughed without knowing the full context. She went on, saying she had finally upgraded to a real man who could carry her without losing his breath. She leaned into Tyce, who puffed out his chest. The DJ played a bass-heavy drop. Someone near the front shouted that she should show the before and after. Another person yelled that the ex sounded like starter boyfriend material. Jonas swore under his breath and took a step forward. I grabbed his arm, fingers digging into his sleeve. I told him this was exactly what they wanted, a scene, something to clip and post. He looked down at me, fury in his eyes, but he stopped. He said through his teeth that he did not understand how I could just stand there. I told him I was not just standing, I was watching. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and, instead of scrolling, I aimed the camera toward the stage. I began to record, not for fun, but for myself. The DJ started a chant, encouraging the crowd to clap and cheer for Kayla and Tyce as a power couple. Kayla turned her back to the crowd, wrapped Tyce's arms around her waist, and joked that this was what strong support looked like. The words stung more than any weight I had ever dropped on my fingers. People around us hooted, whistled, raised their drinks. I became aware, in a strange, detached way, that I was still breathing evenly, my hands not shaking as much as I would have expected. I focused on keeping the camera steady, capturing the scene that had been built at my expense. After a while, I needed air that was not mixed with sweat and smoke. I nudged Jonas and suggested we move to the smoking patio near the back. Outside, the night felt cooler, though the bass thumped through the walls. People stood in clusters, vaping, talking, laughing. I leaned against the railing and watched the door to the club where people were still streaming in. Jonas paced back and forth, hands still in fists, muttering that Tyce deserved to be introduced to a wall. I told him again that we were not going to give them a story where we were the aggressors. He called me too calm. Maybe he was right. But I knew that calm was the only tool I had that Kayla could not easily turn into content. When the night finally thinned out, we went home. On the stairwell landing outside my apartment, Jonas turned to me and asked how I could just walk away from what had happened. I said I was not walking away. I was stepping back to see the full picture. I told him I had recorded enough tonight and that I was tired of only being the face in other people's videos. He shook his head, still angry, but he did not push further. He hugged me hard and said that if I changed my mind about letting him handle Tyce, he would be ready. I thanked him and went upstairs alone. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Kayla would not be home for hours. I set my phone on the table, opened the recording, and watched the stage scene in silence. I took screenshots of key moments, her calling me weak, her saying she had upgraded, the crowd cheering as she wrapped herself around Tyce. I moved the files into my hidden folder, waited for the cloud icon to confirm they had uploaded, and then opened the spreadsheet on my laptop. I added another line for the club event with a few simple words in the notes column. When I finished, I renamed one contact in my phone to a small scales emoji and opened the message thread labeled follow-up. I typed a short description of what had happened and hit send, then turned off the screen. Later, I walked down to the riverside promenade not far from our building. The water moved slowly under the streetlights, reflecting streaks of color from passing cars. I leaned on the railing, listening to the dull echo of club bass carried by the night air. My phone buzzed with new notifications as people reposted clips from the event, captions calling Kayla and Tyce the strong couple, and me the before picture. I did not open them. I just watched the dark surface of the river, hearing in my head the club crowd chanting for Kayla and Tyce to kiss again, phones raised high, as another repost notification vibrated in my pocket and pushed their performance into more hands than I could count. A few days after the club event, Kayla texted me about her brother Nate's birthday dinner. She said her family expected me there, that it would be childish to skip just because I was in my feelings about her new life. She framed it like she was doing me a favor, letting me show everyone I was mature enough to accept the breakup and even support her upgrade. The words sat in the middle of her message like a stone. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore the invite and stay home, but I knew how the story would be told if I did that. I would become the bitter, jealous ex who could not deal with seeing her happy. So I replied that I would come. My mother, Marta, insisted on seeing me first. I stopped by her small house on the way to the restaurant. She made tea and put out a plate of cookies like she always did, as if we were just having a normal visit. But her eyes watched me more closely than usual. I could tell she had heard things. She asked in a quiet voice if Kayla and I were truly finished. I said that from Kayla's side, it seemed like she had already moved on to Tyce. I did not go into detail about the club stage or the upgrade line. I just said that the way she talked about me online had changed, that it had turned from teasing into something sharper. Marta listened, lips pressed into a thin line. She said that a joke was only funny if everyone laughed, and that humiliation felt different in the body. She told me there was a limit to what a person should accept and still call love. At the restaurant, the long table was already half full when I arrived. The place was busy, with families squeezed together in booths and servers carrying plates above their heads. At the far end of the table, Kayla sat next to Tyce, their bodies close. She wore a tight dress and that bright, polished smile she used for the camera. Tyce draped one arm across the back of her chair like he owned both the seat and the person in it. Diane, her mother, sat nearby, already halfway through a drink. Nate, the birthday focus, sat opposite them, looking slightly uncomfortable in a button-down shirt. When I walked up, a few relatives looked surprised to see me. One aunt gave me a small, polite nod. Diane looked me over from head to toe in a way that felt like an inspection. Kayla smiled with her teeth and announced to the table that I had come to show there was no drama and that we could all be grown-ups about the situation. The way she said grown-ups carried a sting, as if she doubted I could manage it. Tyce gave me a nod that might have been a greeting or just a performance for the others. I sat in an empty chair near the middle of the table, not close enough to hear every word they shared, but close enough to see how often their bodies touched. Throughout the meal, conversation flowed around me. People asked Nate about work, about a possible promotion. Someone down the table talked about a new car. Every now and then, someone would glance at me and then at Kayla and Tyce, as if checking for explosions. For a while, I ate quietly, cutting my food into even pieces and focusing on basic tasks like chewing and swallowing. I thought that maybe if I stayed calm and said little, the night would pass like a mild headache. Then Kayla started telling stories. She began with small things, describing how she had started lifting heavier weights since changing her environment, a phrase she used like a motivational slogan. She mentioned how much more confident she felt now that she spent her time with people who lived in the real world instead of hiding in sound booths. People laughed, not always because the line was funny, but because it was easier to laugh than to ask what she meant. She talked about a past relationship with a man who had, in her words, the emotional strength of a wet towel and the arms to match. Eyes shifted toward me, then away again. Diane encouraged her. She asked loudly how Kayla had found the courage to leave such a soft situation and move toward someone who matched her energy. Kayla said she had simply realized she deserved a real man who knew how to carry her physically and emotionally. Tyce flexed one arm jokingly, and the cousins near him laughed. It was not subtle. I could have called it out, but anything I said would have been twisted into more proof of my weakness. At one point, someone suggested going around the table and sharing funny or embarrassing stories about Nate, the birthday guest. The idea twisted in the air and shifted. Diane said that maybe they could also share funny memories about past partners, as a lesson in how people grow. She turned her gaze toward me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. She asked if I could think of any stories about myself, since everyone online already had so many. Her tone made it clear that this was a test. Either I would laugh along, or I would be labeled bitter. I took a breath and answered evenly. I said that I had made mistakes like anyone, but that I did not think humiliating people at a birthday table made anyone stronger. My voice did not shake, even though my heart pounded. Diane's smile thinned. She told me that strong men were able to laugh at themselves, that if I could not enjoy a harmless joke, maybe I should reconsider how confident I really was. She said Kayla had simply outgrown me, and that any man who could not handle that should step aside and let real men step up. Tyce chuckled softly, eyes on his plate. Kayla looked pleased, as if her mother had just delivered a polished line from one of her videos. While this exchange played out, Nate stared at his napkin. When his mother tried to drag him into it, asking if he wanted to share a funny story about me, he shook his head. He said quietly that he did not think mocking people made good birthday memories. It was a small sentence, barely heard over the clatter of plates, but it cut through the noise in my mind. Someone at that table, in that family, could see the line between teasing and cruelty. Diane dismissed him with a wave, but I noticed. After dinner ended and people drifted toward the door, Kayla came close enough to tell me that she hoped I had enjoyed the closure. She said it in a tone that suggested I should be grateful for being invited at all. Tyce did not look at me directly. He kept his attention on his phone, typing something with his thumbs. I left without shaking hands or forcing fake smiles. On the sidewalk, the night air felt cooler than the restaurant, even with the smell of fried food still clinging to my clothes. I drove back to my mother's house instead of going straight home. Marta had waited up, sensing I would need to talk. She made more tea, sat across from me at the small kitchen table, and listened as I described the birthday dinner. I kept the details simple, but she understood enough. She said she was ashamed of how they had treated me and that it was not love to build strength by tearing someone else apart. Jonas arrived a little later, having heard part of the story from texts, and wanted again to take a more direct approach with Tyce. I told him I was tired of the idea that violence was the only answer. I said there were other ways to respond. He did not like it, but he finally nodded. That night, when I returned to my own apartment, the place felt even less like home. I went straight to the small room we had once used as a shared office. The guest bed was still made neatly from the last time a relative had stayed, but the sheets were cold. I pulled them back and smoothed them with my hands, feeling the space where I would sleep alone. Then I opened the bedside drawer and took out the thin binder labeled Utilities. It should have contained only simple bills, nothing more. Instead, it was thicker now, filled with printed transaction summaries, screenshots of posts, and notes folded between pages. None of it had big titles. To anyone else, it would look like boring paperwork. To me, it was a record. In the kitchen, I noticed that without thinking, I had placed my mug on one counter and Kayla's on the opposite side of the sink, as if we had split the room in two. It was a small separation, but it matched the one in my mind. I knew then that I would not go to more dinners to serve as a live target. I would not give Kayla and her family more material. I would choose where I stood. When I lay down in the guest bed and reached to turn off the lamp, my phone buzzed on the small table beside me. The screen lit up with a missed call marked only as private. I watched the notification fade, then opened the thread labeled follow-up and wrote a few short lines about the dinner, about the public mocking, about Nate's quiet refusal. After I hit send, Marta's earlier warning echoed in my head about humiliation having a cost. I looked at the disturbed guest bed, at the utilities binder in the drawer, and understood that the cost would not only be mine to pay if I kept pretending nothing was wrong. The day after Nate's birthday dinner, I woke up in the guest bed feeling like my body had been replaced with something heavier. My head hurt from all the words I had not said at that table. In the kitchen, Kayla's mug still sat on her side of the counter, a small symbol of division. She breezed in from the bedroom with her phone in hand, dressed in leggings and a cropped hoodie, talking excitedly about a new content project. She said she was going to a co-working space with some other creators to film a long story time about how she had outgrown weak men and finally chosen herself. She did not look at me when she said it. I stirred my coffee and asked carefully if she planned to talk about me. She smirked and said that if I did not like being the bad example, I should have been a better lesson. Then she left, the door closing behind her with a soft finality. I went to my mother's house for a while, helped her with a few small repairs, and tried not to sit in my own thoughts too long. When I came back to the apartment later in the afternoon, it was empty. The ring lights were gone from the living room. A few boxes near the door told me she had started moving more of her things to Tyce's place. On the coffee table, her laptop charger lay coiled like a leftover line from a show that had already closed. I opened my own laptop and checked my spreadsheet. The lines had grown. Gym posts, club night, birthday dinner. Each entry was only a few words, but together they formed a path I could follow. In the early evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Talia. She said she was at the co-working space with Kayla and that I might want to know what was being recorded. I hesitated, then asked what she meant. Talia replied that Kayla was telling a long story on camera about her toxic ex, adding new details that Talia had never seen happen. She said Kayla claimed I had blocked doors, screamed in public, and threatened to ruin her life when she tried to leave for a real man. Talia wrote that she felt sick listening because she had known me for years and had never seen me do anything like that. She asked if I wanted copies of the raw files later. I thanked her and said yes. For a moment, I considered driving straight to the co-working space, walking into the room where Kayla sat under perfect lighting and telling her to stop lying. But I pictured how that would be filmed and clipped. The calm ex interrupting a survivor's story would become proof of everything she was inventing. Instead, I took a slow breath and stayed home. I reminded myself that my strength did not come from walking into her set. It would come from what I did quietly, away from her cameras. Later that night, Talia texted again and asked if we could meet in person. We chose the parking garage under the co-working building, a place where cameras were meant for cars, not content. The air down there smelled like oil and concrete. Our cars were parked facing the street, ready to leave quickly. Talia walked toward me with her gym bag over one shoulder and worry on her face. She handed me a small USB stick with the date written on it in black pen. She said she had copied the raw video files and screenshots of Kayla's story drafts, because she could not pretend it was harmless anymore. She told me that in the story time, Kayla had blurred my face but made it clear who I was, and that she had described scenes that had never happened, with details that made me sound dangerous. I thanked Talia for taking the risk. She said she was sorry for laughing at the early jokes, and that she now understood they had been the warm-up for something worse. I told her guilt would not help either of us, but her honesty might. Before we parted, she suggested I talk to someone who knew how these things worked, someone who understood what crossed the line from mean to harmful. I nodded and said I already had a contact in mind. A few days later, I met a friend in the hospital cafeteria. He worked in administration, not law, but he had dealt with complaints and policies around online harassment. The cafeteria was bright and smelled of coffee and soup, the kind of place where serious conversations happened over ordinary food. We sat at a table near a window. I did not bring any documents or show any names. I spoke in general terms, saying that a person I knew was being mocked and lied about publicly by someone close to them. I asked what options existed when jokes became false statements that damaged someone's work and reputation. He explained, in simple words, the difference between rude opinions and claims that could be considered harmful and untrue. He said that if videos accused a person of threatening behavior they had not done, and if those videos affected their job or safety, there were structured ways to respond. He mentioned that any response would require careful records, dates, links, screenshots, and notes about real-world consequences, like workplace warnings or lost opportunities. He never said I should take a specific path. He just laid out the shapes of possible ones. I listened, nodding slowly, feeling my earlier habit of tracking things take on a different weight. Back at home that evening, I plugged the USB stick from Talia into my laptop. I created 2 new folders on the desktop and labeled them Archive A and Archive B. I copied the files into both, watching progress bars creep across the screen twice. A small cloud icon popped up again with the message "File uploaded successfully." Inside the folders, I organized the clips and screenshots into simple subfolders by date. I did not rename anything with dramatic titles. I kept the names plain, numbers, and letters, so that anyone looking later would see structure, not emotion. In the guest room, the utilities binder in the drawer was now thick with the weight of printed pages. I removed it, laid it on the bed, and flipped through the sections. Some pages held bank transaction lists, some held printouts of social posts with timestamps, others held my own short notes about events like the club night and Nate's dinner. I added a few more sheets based on what Talia had given me. When I was done, I closed the binder and set it back in the drawer. It made a soft thump, like a quiet door closing. Jonas came by later that week. He paced around my kitchen while I made coffee. He said he had heard through friends that Kayla's story time was getting attention, that people were sharing it as an example of a woman escaping a dangerous man. He was angry, said he did not understand how I could let that stand. I told him I was not letting it stand. I was standing in a different way, one that did not give her more clips of me looking wild. I said I had started organizing things, talking to people who understood these situations better than we did. He shook his head, frustrated, but then he saw the seriousness in my face. He asked if I was planning to go legal. I chose my words carefully. I said I would handle it properly when the time was right. That was all. At my mother's house, Marta listened to my updates with a sad, steady expression. She said she hated that it had come to this, but she also said that allowing someone to turn you into a villain in public while you stayed silent was another kind of self-harm. She told me that whatever I decided, I should do it with a clear mind, not from rage. I promised her I would. One night, after all these small steps, I sat on the balcony alone. The city moved below with its usual hum. The apartment inside felt half empty. Most of Kayla's clothes were gone now. Tyce had, according to a mutual acquaintance, already started spending time with other women at the club, leaving Kayla to adjust her captions so she looked like she had always chosen freedom over commitment. Even with that, the story about me stayed up. The mocking videos did not disappear just because she had been used and moved aside. That was the part that stung. She had already moved on from me and from him, but the damage to my name kept working quietly. I looked at the 2 mugs still on opposite counters through the open balcony door. I looked at the calendar on the wall where one date near the end of the month was circled in red. On my phone, a recurring calendar event flashed up on the screen. Meeting, personal, linked to that same week. A few seconds after I dismissed it, another alarm buzzed softly. The label on the screen read, "Paper Drop." I stared at the glowing words for a long moment. Then I locked the screen, stood up, and said out loud, to no one in particular, that I was finished being the soft story in someone else's content. I said I would handle everything properly now, and as the words left my mouth, the dim light of the paper drop alarm faded from the phone like a quiet signal that the next part of my plan was ready to begin. The office tower lobby smelled of coffee and perfume as I stood near a column, badgeless among brand people. Kayla walked in glowing, Tyce half a step behind, ready to speak on escaping toxic men. Before she reached the registration desk, a man approached, confirmed her full name, and handed her an envelope. She opened it, reading civil complaint, defamatory statements, and takedown demand, while murmurs rose around her. Brand reps suddenly avoided her eyes. The elevator bell chimed. I met her stare once, calm and steady, then turned and walked out through the revolving door into bright daylight outside.